What's going on, everybody? Coach Mike here with a very important episode 8, 9. I'm losing track here. Strength Coach Thoughts podcast. So today's episode I've been hinting at it a few times now. Um, but basically it's my presentation on coaching leadership, specifically coaching leadership, right? So before we get started, as always, or as going to be always, cheers. Mm. Frozen bombsicle is always a good choice. So, not wearing one today, but again, if you like the headbands that I wear, they are vertical athletic headbands. Make sure you use code Coach Mike at checkout for 15% off. They make cooling headbands, cooling sun scarves, all sorts of cooling material uh, products. So make sure you use code Coach Mike for 15% off at Vertical Athletics. Go get yourself some headbands and whatnot to keep you cool when the summer rolls around. Now, for this podcast slash presentation, all right. As I've mentioned before, I like to cite all my sources. This one, if I'm gonna link the blog in the description below, but this is a very intensive, extensive, whatever. It's a very in-depth analysis, and I'm pulling from multiple sources, primarily Leadership by Northhouse. This is one of the textbooks, quote unquote, I was required to read at my undergrad, which I'll get into that in a second. Heroic Leadership by Chris Lowney. Again, I will get into. I was required to read this in my leadership class in undergrad. I will get into that, and then finally, Wooden, A Lifetime of Observations and Reflections on and off the court by Coach John Wooden himself. So, to basically qualify this, right? Why am I qualified to talk about leadership? One, as we all know, I'm a strength coach. I've been a strength coach in every population from 6-year-old youth kids all the way up through IFL professional football players. I've worked with 82nd Airborne with the Army. I've worked with Air Force Special Warfare here in Lackland. I've worked with Division I, Division III, NAIA. I've worked with high school. I've led a lot of athletes. More recently in my career, now that I've been kind of cresting that 10-year mark, I've also led coaches. I've also been mentoring coaches. I've been kind of thrust into that role as a leader of not only the athletes but also for coaches and weightlifters and weightlifting coaching and so on and so forth. So empirically, I have a lot of experience with leadership. Qualifying wise, as I mentioned, flag right behind me, I've been in the Marine Corps. Marine Corps prides themselves on developing leaders at the lowest level. Everything we do in the Marine Corps is centered around developing leaders. So tenets, character traits, mental grit, physical grit, whatever you want to call that stuff. Everything we do in the Marine Corps was geared towards developing the leaders at the lowest level possible. After that, I was a paramedic. I've been through that as well in this. So as a paramedic, I was often guiding bystanders, law enforcement, junior EMTs or junior medics in emergency medical care or, emergency response, mass casualty, kind of big accidents, stuff like that. So, leading through pressure, leading through stressful scenarios that, arise in an environment like emergency medicine. And finally, like I mentioned at the beginning, the undergrad I went to is John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. John Carroll University is a Jesuit institute. And if you don't know the Jesuits, that is, circling back now, that is the Heroic Leadership book. So this book outlines, it's kind of a back and forth, where one chapter is talking about kind of how the Jesuits came to be, And then the next chapter is, and through that, it tells a story of like, here's how this Jesuit did this. And then the next chapter is a business leadership lesson on that topic. So it's kind of a back and forth book about that. But as a leadership college, a Jesuit college, every discipline, every major takes a leadership class. Mine happened to be a sport leadership class. And my professor of that had her doctorate in sport leadership, focused on, I believe it was female athlete preference of male and female coach. I could be wrong on that, but I do remember that she did have her doctorate in sport leadership specifically. So, a lot of leadership qualifiers here, right? And I'm not saying I have the answers figured out. And Peter Northouse is a business leadership developer, and he's kind of archetyped all these different things. So, with that being said, I'm just going to pull up some notes here. With all that going on, with all that being said, let's get into, like I said, basically this is a PowerPoint that I've been asked to give, and I was asked to put together, and I've kind of presented on it a few times now. But it's a presentation that I've put a lot of work and a lot of emphasis into. And I think, as coaches, we spend so much time on X's and O's, and, we argue set rep scheme, or is exercise science too science and too little exercise, that we forget that at the end of the day, we're leaders and mentors, like I talked about with my What is the Role of the Coach episode. So at the end of the day, understanding how to be a leader and how to be a mentor, which I might do another episode on mentorship, but I have to put that together. But understanding how to be an effective leader is very important for coaches to understand. There are 3 points of emphasis I want you to get from this presentation. Number 1, leaders influence change. Number 2, leaders guide the vision. And number 3, leaders inspire others to act. So, to start off, before we even move forward, I have to put a definition on what is leadership, right? So, most of my sources are going to be from this book, Leadership, and then the Heroic Leadership book. Sorry, I have a small desk here. Heroic Leadership book. And that's where I'm going to pull most of my definitions from. And then John Wooden has a few quotes throughout this. So, the first definition by Northouse on leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. According to Lowney, leadership is establishing direction, aligning people, motivating and inspiring, and producing change. So, when we break these down, right, a process. So starting with the first definition, a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. A process is implying that it's a two-way interaction, right? It is not a one-way, I am the leader, I am in charge, do what I say. It is a two-way interaction where the leader and the follower are codependent on each other. Meaning, if there's nobody for the leader to lead, then they're not a leader. Without followers, there are no leaders. Without leaders, there are no followers. So there's always that dichotomy is always going to be there. Every group of people, there will always be a leader, and there will always be followers. So a process whereby an individual influences. Okay, influence is how the leader affects their environment. It's very important to know that you are always influencing. You are always affecting your environment. This can be positive or negative, but it is always present. So as a coach, if you come in and you got a lot of family stuff going on and you're just having a bad day, and that's you're letting that reflect to your athletes, you are influencing your athletes negatively. I'm not saying, put on the mask and cold heart, no soul, walk in the weight room, leave it all at the door. I'm not saying that at all. Be a human. But also part of being a human is empathy, recognizing that the way you're presenting yourself and the way that you're presenting the information, presenting your experience, your expertise, the way you're conducting yourself is going to influence people whether you want it to or not, because you are in a leadership role. All right. Um, and just remember, if you're not influencing, you're not leading. Like, people are looking to you for influence as a leader. So if you are not influencing people, then you're not leading people. So, influence is a group of individuals where the groups are indicating the context in which leadership occurs. Like I mentioned, um, leadership cannot occur without followers. There are no leaders without the followers. But leaders are influencing individuals to work towards the common goal. This common goal needs to be a mutual common goal amongst the individuals, the group, the leader, the stakeholders in this goal, right? So you can't be a leader that is removed from the goal of what you were trying to achieve, right? So if you are a strength coach and the goal is to win your football strength coach, and your goal is to win the conference championship, but your goal as a strength coach is to get everybody, squatting 500 pounds or whatever, and you don't care about the championship, you just want them to squat heavy. Those are exclusive. Those are, you're not on the same page now. And I've talked about this in other podcasts, but again, that goal should not be a 500-pound squat. The goal should be, what does the athlete need to win that championship, right? Because ultimately, we're support coaches. Our role is to support the sport that we are supporting. So, influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Again, the common goal needs to be a mutual amongst the entire group, leaders, stakeholders included. So, to kind of wrap that definition up, the leader is responsible for initiating the relationship, establishing communication, and they carry the burden of maintaining the relationship, right? So, as a leader, your job is to initiate that relationship. So you have a new athlete come in the weight room. Maybe they're a freshman, maybe they're a transfer, whatever. Your job as the coach is to go up and initiate the conversation with that athlete, to start striking that coach athlete relationship. And then it is also the burden of the coach to maintain that relationship. Check in with the athlete. How's the family doing? How are your grades in school? Do you need anything? Like how's your body feeling? Like, are you eating enough food? Are you drinking enough water? How's your stress? How's your sleep? Like, you're maintaining that professional coach athlete relationship, right? And that's on the coach. That's not on the athlete. The athlete's not responsible for coming up and like telling you all that. The coach is responsible for maintaining that relationship. And I think that's something that, going back to my sports science one, a little caveat back to that episode. I think that's something that's missed a lot, is like, we rely too much on the data. We rely too much on all these wearable crap that 90% of the time isn't even accurate, instead of just having the conversation with the athlete. Because ultimately, the best sports science is, hey, how do you feel today? Hey, how'd you sleep last night? I don't care if my Whoop band tells me I slept like crap. Do you feel like you slept good? Okay, cool. Let's go then. Like, all that stuff is not necessary. Anyway, so that was the Northhouse definition. Now let's look at the Jesuit definition from Lowney. So, establishing direction, right? Leaders are developing the vision, which is something that's been kind of common amongst this theme. And then they also develop the strategies to achieve the vision. So they say, this is where we want to go, and this is how we're going to get there. And that can be collaborative as well. That's not necessarily the leader dictating the steps to the direction. But that can be collaborative as well. That could be, hey, here's where we need to go. How does everybody think we get there? Get everybody's thoughts, pull them all together. Okay, based on this, now here's the leadership. Here's the best course moving forward, right? So, we establish direction. We align people, right? So this is where I talked about in the previous definition, where it's a mutual agreement towards the common goal, right? By establishing the vision and strategies to achieve the vision, the leader needs to communicate the vision and direction to the followers. And then they also need to create teams and groups in line with achieving this vision, right? So the leader should know, if you're a coach, you should know your athletes well enough to get good rack assignments for your athletes. You should know who lifts relatively what. Now, granted, if you have transfers, freshmen, you don't know, but you should have a freshman rack, or you should have You could separate them by experience level or whatever, but like you need to know your athletes well enough to be able to group them up in a lift, because they're not all going to lift together. But also, do you know your team well enough to know that those two shouldn't be at a rack together or racks next to each other, because they're not going to get anything done. They need to be across the weight room from each other. Like just aligning your knowledge of your athletes with the goals and the strategies to achieve those, with the vision and the strategies to achieve the vision. You're putting the people in the place to succeed, basically. So, establish direction, align people, motivate and inspire. Okay. So this one is summed up by leaders, energize people to overcome barriers. Okay. So things are not always going to go great, right? Grades are going to slip, relationships are going to end, um, love, like family emergencies, stuff like that are going to pop up. I've talked about this in the role of the coach episode, but in order to be a leader, you have to energize people to overcome those barriers. Now, I'm not saying come in and say a loved one dies and you're coming in all rah screaming, blah blah blah, everything's gonna be great. Like, no. You got to be empathetic towards the athlete, but also your words should inspire them to be able to handle and move forward from whatever they're facing. Right? You need to be a leader, and you need to. And I'll get into styles here after we define this, but you need to understand your athlete and understand how they respond, what they respond to, so you can properly energize them in order to overcome whatever barriers they're facing. So finally, and producing change, right? So, all of these, if done successfully, should produce the change in line with the vision that we're looking at. If things are staying the same and you have a different vision, you're probably not getting towards that vision. A lot of times, if things are not working and you bring somebody in, if a team is in a losing streak and you bring a new coach in, that new coach is changing everything, because obviously what we've been doing isn't working. So when you come in as a leader and you start changing things around in line with the vision, you set the strategies to get that vision. You put people into their groups and teams in order to be successful. You energize them to overcome the barriers. All of that should now line up for you to achieve that vision. So, very simply put, the leader figures out where to go, sets the direction, gets everyone on the same page, and rallies followers through the barriers along the way. Okay, that is the simplest definition of a leader. So that is the Northhouse business textbook leadership. That is the Jesuit definition of leadership. Now, here is a third definition of leadership, and this is one of my favorite definitions. Leadership is the ability to get individuals to work together for the common good and the best possible results, while at the same time letting them know they did it themselves. And that is none other than Coach John Wooden, right from his book. So, that definition right there, as the leader, as the coach, right? Now we're talking about a basketball sport coach, not a strength coach, but we're talking about a head basketball coach. Leadership is the ability to get individuals to work together for the common good, which is in line with the previous two definitions we talked about, and get the best possible results, performance, while at the same time letting them know they did it themselves. So that key right there is what I keep talking about as support coaches and not primary coaches here. Our job is to support the sport that we are assigned to or that we are working for. I was told very early in my career that, if a team wins, a bowl game or a Super Bowl or whatever the hell you want, whatever March Madness, whatever category you want to call it, they win a big game. You should not be center stage of the camera, right? You should not be on ESPN panning over, watching you dance around on the sidelines in a, child's small polo. You are a support coach, and they should know the athletes' names. Your name should be a kind of niche thing. Like maybe the strength coaches know who you are, but ESPN should not be, highlighting you in the success of the team. Now, if the head coach wants to mention, hey, thanks to Coach Mike for all the success this season, great. but it should not be, like I said, the ESPN shouldn't be panning to you on the sidelines every week, saying, look how crazy this dude is. You are empowering your athletes to feel like they can do this without you, to feel like they are able to go on that court, go on that field, go wherever, and be a team and win as a team. All right, so I'm going to pose a question here. This is a question of the ages when it comes to leadership. And you can comment this down below. Do you believe leaders are born, or do you believe leadership can be taught? Well, I'm going to tell you scientifically there are two types of leadership theories. Okay, the first one is trait leadership, and this is typically what you consider being a born leader. Okay, you are born with certain traits that are desirable in a leader, right? So, trait leadership has been and is still the most common belief about leadership, especially in sport. Have you heard that person's just a born leader or a born captain or whatever? People just listen to that person. Like people just follow them. Like that is what you are. That is what trait leadership is describing. Um, Thankfully, this has begun to shift in sport. We are getting away from the thought that you are born with it, and we are starting to shift to, well, people can learn how to be a leader. People can learn traits to be a leader. The problem with the trait leadership is it focuses solely on the leader and omits the followers or situations, right? So I talked about in the definitions how without the followers, there are no leaders. And it's a codependent relationship, and it's a mutual agreement on visions and everything I talked about. If somebody is a born leader, quote, quote, then it omits the followers completely. It basically says this person was born for this, and the followers have nothing to do with them. It's getting back to what I just talked about with the third definition, with how the strength coach or the coach should be able to empower the athletes to feel like they've done it on their own. That is the being a trait leader or trait leadership theory is the antithesis to that. And this because the emphasis is on the leader and their traits being integral to the leadership model, right? So, common traits associated with trait leadership. These traits have evolved and changed over history based on what is more favored in the workplace. Again, most leadership is mostly studied in a corporate workplace, but they've changed frequently over history. Previously, they've included physical attributes, right? So, being physically strong was a trait of a good leader. We still see this in the military with having some random run time makes you a good leader for some reason. Luckily, we are phasing out of that everywhere else. But trait leadership goes against the process definition of leadership, right? So it's a very limiting view of leadership potential. Um, the process definition, like I talked about, is it's a two-way interaction between the leader and the follower. So the leader presents the vision and they try to align the team, and the team gets aligned and gets the work done for the leader. If it's a trait leadership model, it's basically omitting the followers and saying the leader did it all on their own because of the traits they possess. And that's not the case anymore. So the positives of trait leadership, it does provide a list of trainable skills for someone to learn to be a good leader. And most personality tests used for screenings are derived from research into trait leadership, right? So, some of these traits, most recently, I'm not going to go into the older traits, but as of 2017, and that's as recent as I have with the ninth edition of this book, some of the traits of trait leadership include cognitive ability, being an extrovert, conscientiousness, emotional stability, openness, agreeableness, motivation, social intelligence, self-monitoring, emotional intelligence, and problem solving. I would argue pretty much all of those can be taught to some degree, or at least you can learn how to be some of those. So, um, moving on to the next type of, or the next theory of leadership. Okay. So, um, a skill based leader. A skill based leader is the opposite of trait leader, right? So, the skill based leader is the ability to use one's knowledge and competencies to accomplish a set of goals or objective. Again, that's from Northhouse. So this is a typically a three skill approach with three competencies. So the three skills include technical skills, human skills, and conceptual skills. The competencies include problem solving, social judgment, and knowledge. So what's the difference between the skills and the competencies and the traits, and what does all this mean? So skills are what leaders can accomplish. Traits are who leaders are. Skills can be taught, skills can be learned. Traits are or by definition what you're born with. Um, so the emphasis on skill, thought of leadership, we'll call it a thought, is it's an emphasis on the experience and competent of the leader. So maybe the leader doesn't possess all the traits of a good leader, but the experiences they've been through, and the competency they've shown through those experiences may set them up to be a very good leader in whatever case they're faced with. And this is something we see in sports specifically, where you get that one football captain or that one athlete that was a really good leader, maybe not a great athlete, but they get out and they become a great coach, because they have the skills and they have the competency to understand, um, understand the sport, understand how the athletes are responding in certain situations. They just have the experience in that. They have the reps basically. Um, that's not a trait thing. That's just skills they've developed over their career. So simply put, the skills approach is a description of leadership rather than a list of traits that tries to understand the nature of leadership. Um, Again, looking at the skills, basically, like if you have the skills to be a leader, be a leader. That's kind of the way this approach is. So, um, the three skills. These are the three overarching skills that the skill approach, or the skill theory approaches, right? So technical skills. This is knowledge and ability about a specific type of work or activity. So this is knowledge of your sport, knowledge of S&C, knowledge of the weight room, knowledge of navigating you being a leader, right? If you're a director role, knowledge of policies, knowledge of regulations, stuff like that. But those are the technical skills. This is more important for lower to mid level leaders. So your strength coach and maybe your director level. Um, Less important at higher levels, but this is also debatable for sport, right? So again, most of this is research in the corporate world. Um, so they're talking lower to middle management, and then your C-suite executives. But in sport, those lines are a little more convoluted. So it is good to have a well-rounded technical skills base if you're a lower to mid, maybe you're a mid assistant or something like that. Um, but it is good to have that knowledge and ability about the specific type of work you do. Human skills. So these are knowledge and ability about how to work with people. This is empathy. This is communication skills. This is nonverbal skills. This is all presentation. Like how do you dress? How do you present yourself? Stuff like that. Basically, the knowledge and ability and how to work with people. This is important in every level of professional interaction, whether you are a brand new coach, intern GA level, all the way up through president of the company, the school, whatever your role is, right? And then the conceptual skills. Okay. So conceptual skills are the ability to work with ideas and concepts. Um, Basically, are you able to take in an idea, think the idea over, and then determine an action based on that idea? This is central to creating a vision and strategy moving forward. If you can't work with ideas and kind of mull them over and have that kind of internal monologue with these ideas and concepts, you can't create a vision, and then you definitely won't have strategies moving forward with the vision. This is very important for upper leadership, Not necessarily for lower leadership. However, lower leadership needs to be able to develop the skill and or have the skill already to understand the vision and the strategy a little bit better to help put them in that better spot to move up the ranks. All right, so the competencies is the modern version of the 3 skill approach. Is trying to be more specific about the skills, right? Um, your attributes, your experiences, and external influences impact your competency. So, um, what your personality is, your attributes of your personality, the experiences you've had, the external influences, the people you've met, the conditions you did stuff under, all that kind of stuff, that impacts how competent you're going to be as a leader. So, the skill approach, basically, the reason this is becoming the more popular approach is this allows management and leadership hierarchies to plan and develop leaders through teaching the desired skills and training them to refine the qualities and characteristics of these skills. Again, trait leadership is going to be you're born with it and like you either have it or you don't. Skill leadership says we can teach you how to be a leader, um, if that's what you want to do, or if we see that potential in you, right? So there is one more type that is a much newer theory, and it's a much less studied theory, but that's your behavioral leader, right? Um, so the leader emphasizes the behavior of the leader and focuses exclusively on what leaders do and how they act. Okay, so this is traits leadership with minus the traits. Basically, how do you react in situations? Um, the problem with this is it does not provide instruction. Rather, it describes major components of leadership behavior, right? So this can evaluate a person who may be trained in leadership or is a born leader and see how they actually act in various leadership situations, right? So did you learn to be a leader or were you born with it? That doesn't matter. How do you actually react in leadership situations? Um, so there's two kinds of behavior that they've kind of found in this theory, right? So your task behavior, where you are focused on achievement. What are the number? Here's your quota. Hit this quota. That's your job, right? So, we need everybody to decrease their 40 time by point whatever seconds, like whatever. That's the task, right? And then you focus on that. Then there's relationship behavior. So this is helping others feel comfortable with themselves, with others, and with situations, right? So this is basically the leader focusing on the task or focusing on the people. The task is get this done. Focusing on the people is I want you to feel comfortable to get this done. Okay. So the purpose of this is to explain how these two come together to influence their followers, right? It's a continuum between the two. Leadership sometimes requires you to focus on the task, right? We got a deadline coming up. We got preseason coming up. I need my athletes ready to go, conditioned for the volume that they're going to see once preseason starts. And then it sometimes requires a relationship focus, right? I keep alluding to personal situations. We work with athletes as strength coaches. If we're lucky, we work with athletes over a long period of time, 4 years, two to 4 years, more than that, right? Transfer portal and all that stuff now is a little less, but you get what I'm saying. You are creating a relationship, coach athlete relationship with that athlete. You are creating a connection with them. You are directly influencing, whether you're a youth, high school, or college strength coach, you are directly influential in the development of their life, of their social skills, their brain development, their physical development. I mean, obviously physical, we're strength coaches, but like we are I talked about this in the role of the coach episode. We are responsible for so much more than just the physical development. That relationship focus is what a coach is, and that's what a leader should be, because followers that respect the leader and they feel bought into the vision and bought into the strategy of the vision are going to be much more productive followers. All right, now those were types. So basically, those were, are you born with it? Can you learn it? Like those were like, how does leadership come about in the person? The rest of this is going to be various styles of leadership from the research. Um, so a style is basically um, how how do you design your leadership philosophy? Let's think of it that way, right? All right. So the first style of leadership is a situational leader. Okay. A situational approach focuses on leadership in situations. Different situations demand different kinds of leadership. Effective leadership requires that people adapt their style to the demands of different situations. So this style of leadership is very, what does the situation call for, and let me respond to that situation. I don't have a style per se. I just kind of lead the way the situation calls for. And there's typically two patterns of situational leadership. So there's directive with timelines, milestones, etc., and then there's supportive, which is enabling the individuals. So I know I'm not sharing my screen. You can't really see all my little charts and graphs and models and whatnot. But basically, there's a model of situational leadership, right? And this relies situational leadership. Sorry, I'm just zooming in on my own stuff here so I can read my notes. All right, so there's a 4-step model to situational leadership, basically, right? And this is, again, this is all outlined in this leadership book, and all the charts and models and whatever are pulled from this book. So these are not my thoughts. These are not my opinions. These are science and practice as of not current. Well, the most current book as of 2022. So yes, pretty current. Um, so uh, this model kind of goes through the flow of situational leadership, right? So it's starting off with your first tier, right? It is directing. It's high directive and low supporting, right? You are telling somebody how to do their job, and this is typically, think of this as a new hire, a new coach, a young intern, whatever, right? Then the second tier gets into coaching, and this is from the leader, right? So this is the leader coaching the person under them. So this is high directive and high supportive. You're trying to support that um, new person in the new information that you've provided them, right? And that you've directed them. Then you go into supporting. So now you are high supportive and low directive. So you are giving them less direction and you're just supporting their decision making now. And then eventually you go into delegating, which is low supportive, low directive. Think of, you're the director and you have 4 or 5 coaches under you doing their own sports. You're not overseeing, like, if I'm the Olympic director, I'm not overseeing what my basketball, softball, volleyball, all my other coaches are doing. I'm not overseeing their programming. I'm assuming that, I mean, well, if I hired them, then I hired them based on, their competency and what they showed me. But I'm assuming that as a director, you have taken them through this process and now you are delegating them to run those teams. Um, if that's not the model, then I'm sorry, you should probably be doing that. You need to delegate more to your coaches. Um, so this style of leadership relies heavily on delegation and competency of the followers, right? So I am relying on the ability of my followers to go do their job, and I am delegating them to go do so, which frees me up to do my job better. Um, this does have a heavy emphasis on assessments, evaluations, etc., performance reviews, whatever you want to call them. But in order to know strengths and weaknesses in the different situations, right? So I'm constantly reviewing my coaches, so I know that they need to work on X, Y, Z, right? And this also requires your director or leader to match the style of the strengths and weaknesses of their followers, right? So I need to be the example for them. So sorry, just zooming out again. So focusing on directive style of situational leadership. This is the traditional idea of a manager. They set tasks, they set timelines, they do performance reviews, etc. This is a one-way communication, right? This is I'm the manager, you're my worker, go do your job. Supportive is a people-centered leadership style, right? So this is I focus on making the followers feel comfortable in themselves or coworkers and situations in order to meet the objectives of whatever we're doing. So whether that's a company objective, whether that's just an internal objective, whatever it is, um, I am basically empowering my workers under me in order to be able to meet the timelines and everything without me being there directing them. And that's a two-way street. So that requires both parties to be on the same page again, which is what I've been talking about this whole time. So, transformational style of leadership. Okay. Transformational leadership is concerned with the emotions, values, ethics, standards, and long term goals of what they're in charge of, right? So, there are two types of transformational leaders. One type is true transformational, and the other type I'll get to in a minute. But your true transformational leader it puts a significant emphasis on the relationship between the leader and the followers, between the coach and the athletes, right? The coach and the strength coach and the sport coaches, the director, the performance director, and the coaches, whatever it is. Um, this is the opposite of what a transactional style, which I'll get into that, um, style of leadership is, which transactional encompasses all styles that focus on the exchange between leaders and followers, right? Um, I'm the leader, you're the follower, you do this, and I give you this. That's transaction. Think of buying anything, and that's what a transaction is. So anything that is like me buying respect as a leader is a transactional leader. Transformational leader raises the level of motivation and morality in both the leaders and the followers, right? So both the leaders and the followers are held accountable to each other. Um, and I want to circle back to the original slide here. Additionally, like the second half of the definition here is assessing followers' motives, satisfying their needs, and treating them as full human beings. Transformational leadership involves an exceptional form of influence that moves followers to accomplish more than what is usually expected of them. And this incorporates charismatic and visionary leadership, right? So basically, to sum this up, um, transformational leadership is not just focusing on the objectives, but it's focusing on truly making everybody better people. And this is something that, again, I've kind of radiated through all my conversations here. This is what I feel the coach should be: is you are there to make the athletes' lives better. You are there to make the coaches' lives easier. You are there to make your directors' lives easier. But ultimately, you're there to raise everybody up and make everybody better. Um, And finally, on transformational leadership, research indicates that transformational leadership elicits the highest psychological improvement in both the leader and the follower. Has the highest bang for your buck, basically. Now, I said there's two types of transformational leadership. That is true transformational. Then you have pseudo transformational. This is exactly what you think it is. It's fake. It is self-centered leadership. It is focused on power and self-image, and it's transformational to negative ethics and morals. This is the coach that as soon as they step on the floor, they're faking energy, they're forcing energy, they're doing all this crap that's not them. And quite honestly, everybody sees through that. That is not a good leader. And I understand, oh, well, my head football coach wants it to be like this. Cool. But be like that organically. Like if you're not a cheerleader yeller, don't be a cheerleader yeller. You could still have a high energy in the room without being a cheerleader yeller kind of coach, right? So that's pseudo transformational. There's not a lot to say on that. It sucks. Don't be that one. Now here's a kind of no brainer, but this is a tough one. Authentic style of leadership, right? So, ironically, this is a newer style that's been identified, and this is so it doesn't have a lot of research into it. But there's basically three perspectives on authentic leadership, right? There's intrapersonal, where with leaders understanding themselves. There's interpersonal, where leaders are developing their teams and connections. And then there's developmental, where leadership is nurtured as the leader develops, right? So think of the leader having a mentor that's developing them as well as while they're being a leader. Um, so basically, the concept of authentic style of leadership is whether the leadership is genuine and real. Um, I just talked about pseudo transformational. Um, this is looking at just being a true leader, like being true to yourself, being true to your team, being true to the people that have helped bring you up as a leader. So this focuses on the authenticity of leaders and their leadership. So it's not just how are you being real, but is your leadership real? Actually are you actually implementing the strategies to pursue the vision you laid out or you and your team agreed on? So this became as a result of people feeling apprehensive and insecure about society, which means they longed for a bona fide leadership that they can trust and rely on, and leaders who are honest and good. Basically, this authentic style of leadership were the followers demanding the more real leaders. Um, and this has been across the board. People are tired of the fake leadership and the fake stuff. And they're calling for authentic leaders now. So, as I mentioned, there are three approaches to this. There's intrapersonal, where the leader knows and is confident in themselves. Um, this is just being original and using life experience to lead. This is throwing the books out the window. Kind of go by your introspection into yourself, right? There's interpersonal, where the leader is developed by both the leader and the followers. So the leader is developed by their followers. So the followers are giving them feedback and they're saying, hey, like here's what we like, here's what we don't like, so on and so forth. And then they're also being developed by the situations they're put in, the experience they're getting, the education they're getting, all the trainings they're doing, etc. Um, and then there's developmental, where authentic leadership is something that can be taught and it can be nurtured over a lifetime, right? So this is where we see in movies, right? A big cataclysmic event happens, and then the unlikely person steps up and becomes a leader. That's kind of what they're seeing in the authentic leader. Is this can be triggered by significant event in that person's life. Um, the loss of a job. Let's say OS&C. You shuffle around college to college or job to job for every year. You have a new job, and you're finally tired of it. So you decide to start, take a communication, class on YouTube University, or like you start learning some leadership skills. From there, you decide that you're done hopping job to job. You want to go for a director role, or you want to open your own thing up, or do your own online stuff. Like you're taking it into your own hands now to become the leader, and that is through that you start learning, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. That is the best way to explain developmental authentic leadership. Now for the Jesuit side of things, right? This now I'm bringing back to the Jesuits. Um, So authentic leadership comes from within. It cannot be faked or phoned in without the followers noticing and buy-in suffering. I talked about this with pseudo transformational. If you're faking it, we're seeing straight through it. Everybody's seeing straight through it. That freshman coming in that you think, oh, I'm gonna fake it, and we're gonna set the standard and culture and blah blah blah. But yeah, but if you're not living it, they're gonna see right through that. Don't think they won't. But this require in order to be authentic, right? This requires regular self-evaluation in order to maintain the self-knowledge required to execute authentic leadership well. You got to know yourself to be yourself. So the Jesuit view on self-reflection. Okay. And this is They have a lot of similar styles of leadership as this, but they don't break them down as much as here. But on self-reflection, this is kind of the guideline to self-reflection according to the Jesuits. Appreciating oneself as talented, you're identifying personal baggage and weaknesses, you're articulating personal goals and ambitions, you're determining what you stand for, you're determining your worldview, and you're making a habit of personal reflection of those points mentioned. So it's not just, here's my worldview and that's that. It's like, no, as new information happens, as you receive new information, as things change in the world, you're constantly reflecting on those, and your worldview may change. You may have new weaknesses that you're discovering. You may have different goals and ambitions. Like, you're constantly reflecting on these traits, or on these bullet points here, in order to stay self-aware and be authentic. All right, now speaking of Jesuits, this is going to be a Jesuit heavy style of leadership. I'm of course talking about servant leadership, right? I have been saying for every episode, probably every episode, that strength and conditioning is a support role. As a coach, you are a servant to the athletes. We have had our time on the court and the field. We've had our time under the lights. Now it is our job to turn around and develop those that it's their time now. Okay. So, servant leadership, you're putting your followers first. You're empowering them, and you're helping them develop their full personal capacity. Back to John Wooden's quote: empower, enabling them, energizing the athletes to feel like they did it themselves, right? This focuses on the leaders serving their followers in a way that allows them to reach their full potential and be able to not only do their job, but excel in their job and in their lives. Okay. You're placing, as a leader, as a coach, you're placing your followers first, like, primarily, no matter what. You are never the center of attention. And I'm talking about physically, of course, mentally, socially, their well-being, their development, everything is them first. So the Jesuits have 10 characteristics. I'm going to quickly breeze through them. Don't worry, this one won't take that long. But listening, you listen first, acknowledge, and validate. Okay, you're not the expert on everything. Empathy, you are attempting to see the world through the other person. You're trying to demonstrate true understanding here. Most of us in strength and conditioning and as sport coaches have been athletes ourselves. Yes, we understand the demands, but no, we don't understand the demands of today. Most of us, I would argue, did not have social media, NIL, all the attention and media put on us that these kids have now at whatever level they're at, right? So empathy is you're attempting to see from that point of view, right? And then you're trying to understand them from that point of view. You're then confirming and validating those feelings to your athletes, and you're trying to make them feel unique. You're trying to make them feel like their situation matters and their situation is real. Um, Healing. So, um, you're developing the well-being of the followers, right? In making the followers whole, you become whole yourself as a leader. You are. We've seen those movies where you have the washed-up master or the washed-up hero, who the young buck finds, and he's all washed up and whatever, and he's down in the dumps, and then through helping the young hero, they become whole again themselves. It's a trope, but that's what servant leadership is trying to articulate with the healing power of bringing others up first. Um, so your awareness, you're acutely tuned and receptive to the internal and external environments, right? You understand yourself and the impact on the environment. I talked about this in the first style, or in the first, in the first style. Like, everything we do, we are going to have an impact, whether that's positive or negative, whether we want to or not. Everybody, athletes, coaches, support staff, janitors, whatever, people are watching everything we do. So if we're not aware of that, and we're not aware of ourselves, then that's gonna influence our impact on the environment. And finally, under awareness, it's the ability to step aside and view yourselves objectively. Um, are you being authentic? Are you truly helping your athletes um, not self-serving? Are you helping them authentically, or are you helping them, in hopes that one day they help you, kind of thing? Like, anyway, so continuing on this list of characteristics: persuasion, clear and persistent communication that convinces others to change. This is opposite of coercion. Coercion is basically forcing people, manipulating people, to get what you want. Persuasion is trying to convince them why the change needs to happen, or why your idea is better than what they're doing now. Conceptualization, so the ability to visualize the big picture. Um, this allows you to be able to respond to problems creatively, but in line with the vision that has been set, right? So foresight, the ability to use past evidence and current trends to predict the future. Not saying you're psychic, but history repeats itself, and you can use a lot of uh, past information, a lot of past trends to kind of figure out what's going to happen next. Stewardship, taking responsibility for the role and being held accountable for mistakes, for whatever. Commitment to growth, treating each follower as a unique person and giving them the tools to grow and develop. And then finally, building community. This allows followers to identify with something greater than themselves, and it provides a safe space for expression of self and ideas. Now, I'm not saying safe space like we know of today. I'm basically saying it allows the athlete to be authentic and be themselves, which makes them more comfortable and allows them to develop more wholly. So the Jesuit view of servant leadership summed up in 3 points. It is the vision to see each person's talent, potential, and dignity, the courage, passion, and commitment to unlock that potential, and the loyalty and mutual support to energize and unite teams. Again, circling back to those 3 definitions at the beginning, all of these styles are basically falling under those umbrella definitions. So, the last one I'm going to talk on here, and there are quite a few more in this book. A lot more are less applicable to this topic, to sport leadership specifically, but this is adaptive leadership. Okay, so in short, adaptive leadership is the behavior of and the actions undertaken by leaders to encourage others to address and resolve changes that are central in their lives. So basically, you are prepared to your job is to prepare and encourage people to deal with change and face problems head on. You do this by providing them with space or opportunity to learn new ways of developing with of dealing with change or problems. So there are it's a 4 systems approach to this, but basically it's, did I say that right? 4 biases, excuse me. There's a 4 bias approach. The first bias is a systems bias, where problems are embedded in complex, multifaceted, and dynamic processes that are connected in webs to other problems. Okay, so most problems are not just one problem. It's interconnected. It's multi-system problem. The biological bias is people develop and evolve as a result of internal and external influence, right? People don't just magically develop like without anything happening to them. They need external influence, they need internal influence. Um, they need a catalyst to change. We know that in strength and conditioning, as specificity, as overload, as the said principle, similar application to leadership here. So, service bias. The leaders use their expertise or authority to observe or to serve others by diagnosing their problems and helping them resolve them. So basically, this could be I sit down with the coach and they're telling me, excuse me, they're telling me I don't know what to do. I can't connect with this coach. I can't connect with this athlete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And me as the leader, I go out and I start talking with the coach. I start talking with the team, and I diagnose what the problem is, and then I come back and I say, okay, um, here's how we're going to resolve these problems. I'm going to teach you this, teach you that, whatever. And then you have psychotherapeutic. Okay, so people need a supportive environment, and they adapt more successfully when they face difficult situations directly. This is resolving internal conflicts. This is how you learn new attitudes and behaviors, right? So, again, I know you guys can't see my charts and graphs and stuff like that, but basically, if for adaptive leadership style, there's a flow chart here, and I'm going to kind of talk through the flow chart real quick. So, when faced with a challenging situation, first thing that happens is the leader steps back from the situation to understand the complexities of the situation. Okay, that's your systems approach. The leader assesses if if challenge is technical or adaptive in nature. If technical, the leader addresses the challenge with authority. Okay. If adaptive, the leader engages in specific behaviors to move the process forward. The leader uses adaptive behaviors to help followers address the challenge. And then finally, followers engage in a safe environment to work on changing behaviors and managing solutions to the challenge. So, circling back, the definition of leadership from Northhouse is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. The Jesuit definition from Lowney is establishing direction, aligning people, motivating and inspiring, and producing change. This is as I previously mentioned just a minute ago, all the styles that I've just covered in this basically fit into both of those definitions, if not at least one of those definitions, right? Um, More specifically, though, the Jesuit model of success here is creating a strong culture in practice, right? Not just saying we have a culture, but creating a strong culture in practice that guides your day-to-day decision or behavior and decisions, right? The culture is strategically appropriate and meets the demands of the service. You're not just creating a culture to have a culture. You're creating a culture that aligns with the visions and the strategies that you have laid out. And then your culture promotes the adaptability of your followers, of your leader, etc. It doesn't block change, but it promotes change through that adaptability. So here is now where I'm going to pose some questions to you. Okay. Are you leading or are you managing? Right. So this is what determines a good leader. People can be fantastic managers. You could be a great director of a program because you are extremely organized. You are great at saying the right words and talking to the right people in the right way. Um, but you may be a bad leader or a poor leader. I don't want to say good or bad, but you may be a poor leader where the coaches under you don't really respect you or don't really care too much of what you have to say. The athletes under you don't respect you or care what you have to say, stuff like that. You can be great at managing people, but bad at leading people. Um, and it's I want to emphasize here with this point. This isn't something you can tell me. This is not something I'm a good leader. I'm a bad manager. I'm a bad whatever. What's going to tell me if you are managing or leading is your culture and how your followers react towards you or with you, right? Because you could think you're a good manager, you could think you're a good leader, but then you step out of the room and I stick around and they start talking crap about you. You're probably not a good leader. You haven't influenced them, or depending on what crap they're talking, that might be a bad example. But if I see that they don't respect you and you're telling me you're a good leader, I'm not buying it, because your followers and your culture is what tells me the kind of leader you are. So what is your priority as a leader? All of the models that I presented, all the styles, types, etc., emphasize the need for the group and the leader to work off of each other, right? So if your priority is you're after power or self-interest, that's going to reflect. Okay. That your followers are going to see that. Administration management's going to see that. Everybody's going to see that. All the models emphasize the leader having a vision. This vision either needs to be shared by the group or you're directed by the leader. So you could have a vision that the football coach presents to the whole team and the whole team's on board and everybody comes together and says, this is what we want to accomplish with the season. Or you could have the coach come in and say, this is what we are accomplishing this season. Get on board or get out kind of thing. Um, and then all of the models emphasize direction, right? The leader providing direction. This is either the leader providing direction, like I just said, or the group with the leader being available. So basically, is the leader leading from the front, or is the leader leading from the back with the group leading from the front? And I do want to emphasize, I've been in the military population training there for about 3 years now. Leading from the back is not a bad thing. That leading from the back tells me that you have created leaders, self-sufficient leaders that largely only need you to, figure out the higher process stuff. I mean, think of most wars too, and I'm applying this to tactical now. Your generals and your commanders are not on the front lines leading from the front, like they say. They're in, at best, they're in FOBs or they're back on main bases overseas, very protected, very well, covered, and they're leading the troops from there. While your lower level leadership, like your NCOs and stuff, are the ones actually on the front lines leading. So leading from the back is not always a bad thing. Leading from the front is not always a good thing either. If you're always leading from the front, you're not creating opportunities for your followers to show leadership either. So it's not as black and white as leading from the front or you're not a good leader, or leading from the back's a bad. It's not that black and white. It's very 90% of this leadership stuff is gray area, very situational dependent, very convoluted. So I just want to, like, these questions are not me saying you're wrong. I am just presenting the arguments towards you, right? So, basically, what I was taught for leadership, right? The quality of the people. So what determines a good leader? We're still under that. What determines a good leader? What I've been taught that determines a good leader is the quality of the people that you've had an influence over directly. So as a coach, the quality of my athletes that I've coached once that influence is no longer present. So once my athletes are no longer my athletes, they are off in the real world doing real world things. What quality of person are they? And I mean, granted, if I've only had a small influence over them, like maybe a year or so, that's still a year of influence I've had over them. I would hope that they're a somewhat better person for that year of influence I've had over them, and a much better person if I've had longer influence with them. Than if I had not had that influence. So, um, in summary, with all of this, basically, a great leader leaves a trail of leaders behind them. And I mean, Nick Saban is the example I point to all the time. You can't look in college or even NFL now and see somebody Nick Saban hasn't directly influenced. Whether that's current coaches that are current head coaches of a lot of programs that have worked under Saban at one point, athletes that worked under Saban that went on to do great things. Like, Saban was a good, it is, I mean, he's not was, but he's not coaching anymore. But I mean, Nick Saban is a good leader. He's, whether you want to talk about him as a football coach or not, I think he's a phenomenal football coach as well. I mean, listen to what was it? I've read a few Nick Saban books, but it was back in the Bear, I think. It's about Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, chapter back and forth. I mean, he's a great football coach as well, but again, by my definition, my personal definition of leadership is a great leader leaves a trail of leaders behind them. That's a mark of a good leader. Um, so if you are in a leadership position, I just challenge you to think about that. Are you directing people? Are you managing people? Or are you truly trying to develop the people under you to be the same level, if not better leaders than yourself? I know in strength and conditioning, we are very gatekeepy, and we're very good old boys club and all that, whatever you want to call it. And I know you don't want to train somebody to do your job and they take your job from you, but I also think we're missing the mark there. I think strength and conditioning, a lot of the problems in strength and conditioning that we face are self-inflicted. We talk about hours, we talk about pay, we talk about respect, we talk about, whatever we want to talk about. It's all self-inflicted because we are so gatekeepy and we are so restrictive on what we teach our young guys and the younger people in the field that we're suffocating our own field. We're killing ourselves in trying to protect our one job, where we could probably get a lot more jobs and get the right people in positions to actually elicit change if we focused on uplifting each other rather than stepping on each other to get ahead. And I know, I mean, I hope in 4 or 5 years, if this, if this podcast or YouTube channel blows up, I mean, I hope my words are you know, are wrong by then. I hope that we have turned around as a field and we do come together and we start trying to help each other out and lift each other up, um, and help each other grow rather than trying to step on people. And I do know there are those coaches out there. However, I'm starting to see them shift into academia a lot more than stay in the SNC on the floor. I'm starting to see a lot more coaches on the floor that are more of the toxic coaches that are gatekeepy and they want to keep it a certain way. And then the ones that are willing to help people are taking more management or not management, like leadership roles in organizations or going into academics or, they're getting off the floor. And I don't know if that's, I don't know why that is, but I do hope that we can kind of turn around the coaches that are on the floor and get that knowledge, experience, education passed on to the younger generation rather than do well, when I was an intern, I had to work, 80 hours a week for free and blah, 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 blah. So you have to do it too to earn your right. Like we're done with that. We can't say that and then in the same breath complain about, making 50K a year and working, 80 hours and traveling with teams and doing all this. We can't we can't have that complaint and then turn around and treat our interns, GAs, young coaches the exact same way that we are trying to change. It doesn't work that way. So I just hope that one day later on, if this podcast blows up, if this YouTube channel blows up, I hope that my fears are not justified, but I hope we are committing to being the change in the industry that needs to happen. Because if we don't, this industry is going to continue to choke itself out, especially with the unknowns of NIL around the corner, where there's a very real chance that the athletes will be paid hourly more than the strength coach will, like more than the ATs will, more than any of the support staff will. And then what kind of conversations are we having? So I hope my fears are not justified, but I also hope if my fears are not justified, then we've turned the field around, and that's a good thing. So, um, anyway, that's enough of that rant because I'm not solving any problems on this podcast. So, I just want to say thank you for listening to this longer form episode of Strength Coach Thoughts. This has been one that I've been promising I would do since I've started the podcast. Kind of going through my leadership presentation. No, I normally don't take this long. Yes, I'm normally more. Excuse me. Wow. Usually more collected with my thoughts, more presentation style when I present this. But I wanted this to just be an informal conversation. It's a podcast. It's not a business coach presentation. It's just my collection of information on leadership applied to coaching. So if you got value from this, please like the video, share it with strength coaches share it with anybody you think would get value from learning about leadership. Um, Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I post my training videos daily. I'm going to start doing technique videos. I know I keep saying that, but I am getting to it. I have some stuff recorded already that I just have to figure out the best way to deliver it without being the same as every other YouTube channel. But I post my training videos, meets I go to, different stuff like that. Um, Obviously, the podcast is weekly. Yeah, and make sure you comment down below what style of leadership you think is important, your experience with different styles of leadership. If you think this is important, if you think this is all like, not important, like this is just a waste of time, whatever you feel you need to comment, please comment down in the comments. Any engagement helps the channel. We are trying to grow this channel. We're I'm trying to get to 50 here. I mean, we're almost at 40, so I know 50 doesn't seem like a lot, but in the YouTube world, I'm a nobody, and 50 subscribers means a lot to me. So um, make sure you like, share, do all the YouTube things that the algorithm wants you to do, um, and stay tuned for future episodes. I've been Coach Mike. This is Strength Coach Thoughts. Use code Coach Mike at checkout for 15% off your Vertical Athletics headband, or whatever else you order from the store. I mean, it's a great store. Go check them out. But make sure you use that code to get your discount. Other than that, thanks for listening. And again, I hope you found value in this.